Good evening. Tonight we're going to talk about mental health in our youth. But before we get started, I would like everyone to think of one question. Have you ever came in contact with someone that has had a mental health issue? Maybe your own child, family member, relative, either in their youth ages, adolescence, or even adults. As we begin, here's a little background. In recent years, mental health has become a topic we can no longer ignore. When it comes to our youth and how they experience things in today's world, it has you thinking of what they face. Here are a few: peer pressure, depression, and anxiety. Now it is time to take a closer look at the following and see how we can make a difference. The world they're navigating. The world they're navigating could look like many things. Youth on social media, youth in school, all the way to spending time with friends. How does that look? The youth is experiencing more and more peer pressure, which leads to depression and anxiety. I can tell you this firsthand, since I've seen it with my own eyes, within my own home. It's very heartbreaking when you see your own child going through this. Mental health is a real thing in all ages, but how they navigate it, how they get through it, how do they overcome it? By looking at this picture, you have students looking things up on a computer instead of doing work the old-fashioned way, paper and pencil. Two of them are smiling and laughing. One little girl, by the look of her face, is in awe. Why? What are they looking at? This brings you to supporting youth mental health through a health coaching intervention with mindfulness. I've personally used a health coach for intervention to help me, myself, overcome how I can help my own child within my own house. Although data are still emerging, initial reports suggest that youth mental health concerns worsened during the COVID-19 pandemic back in 2020. The studies indicate that health coaching combined with mindfulness techniques can be a promising approach to improve mental health among youth as long as different interventions were put in play. They are saying it will help reduce symptoms of anxiety and depression. Over the next few slides, I will show some data that I have found. Children with anxiety, depression, and ADD and ADHD back in 2018-2019. You can see the percent is pretty low. 4%, 7%, 8%, 13%, 9%, and 11%. No higher than 15% between depression, anxiety, or children with ADD or ADHD. Now it brings you to the percents from children ages 5 through 12 from October to November of 2020, right as the pandemic was starting. Emotional health, 22%. Depression, 4%. Anxiety, 6%. Stress, 9%. So, as you're thinking of mental health and substance use consideration among children during COVID-19, think about it. Social media. This is what the children were turning to. They weren't capable of going outside. They weren't capable of playing with their friends. All they had to was to turn to video games, TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram. Not just picking up a phone and calling a friend, having a conversation. They begin looking at things, thinking, oh, if they can do it, why can't I do it? I need to be like that person on the screen. So as youth mental health worsened during the pandemic, 37% had poor mental health. 44% felt sad and hopeless. 29%, they had an adult in their home lose a job. 55% emotional abuse at home. 11% was physical abuse at home. That has you thinking, just in a short amount of time, how are we going to navigate it? We're back to that. But when we talk about if the youth gets the help they need, moving on to a way we feel anxiety and depression, it's growing stronger and stronger. It's the fact of social media can make it harder. I'm saying this because during COVID, all my son wanted to do was play video games and search the web to be cool like the other kids. But that was only half of the kids. Not every kid had social media, were able to play video games. So they got more put in probably a depression state. As you can see here, children that got the consistent treatment with depression was 22%. Only 14% had some treatment, but 64% doesn't get treatment at all. So over the next two pictures, you see here's a young girl on a phone instead of interacting with her friends outside. We don't know what she's looking at, but you can kind of see by her face. Just looking. It could be her friend's post. What are they saying? What are they doing? I wasn't invited. But then you have the picture next to it, where here's a bunch of teenagers looking at their phones instead of interacting with one another. One smiling and laughing. Two of them are looking at something. The girl in the purple looking at her phone, wondering, are we looking at the same thing? What's that person doing? What are they laughing about? Is it something that I put on there? So social media can be a double-edged sword. So can having a platform of schoolwork on a computer. While it can still connect classmates to one another when working on a task, therefore, it can simply amplify feelings of loneliness, inadequacy, and anxiety, which will lead me into talking about addressing the rural youth mental health crisis through the youth mental health first aid. Within this article, it discusses the growing of mental health challenges faced by our youth in rural areas and a potential of youth mental health first aid. Rural youth often experience higher rates of mental health issues, such as depression, anxiety, and suicide due to the factor like limited access to the mental health services. The article highlights the importance of equipping rural communities by providing teachers, parents, and other adults with the skills to respond to the youth mental health crisis. Which this brings us to our next topic. The Hope Squad. The Hope Squad is a support group or peer mentoring sessions. It does not only have to be done within schools. It can be done within buildings all around the nation. Below is the website at hopesquad.com. Feel free to look it up. Feel free to browse. I can tell you that there's so much support in many forms, whether it's a trusted friend or a peer, to a parent, to a teacher, or even a counselor. Sometimes just knowing that someone understands can make all the difference. My son helped out peers before when they had been depressed, suicidal. He always gave them a lending ear to listen to. But they've also done a favor for him. They've helped him get through anxiety. They've helped him through anxiety attacks. When he started to feel nervous about something, felt like he wasn't wanted, he's had friends that would step up and help. So this brings us to what can we do? What can we do? First, we need to talk about mental health more openly. When we normalize conversation about mental well-being, we reduce the stigma and encourage young people to ask for help when they need it. That is the best thing that we can do. Have an open mind. By having an open mind, it gives you the effects of the social self-efficiency and self-blame on the longitudinal relationship between perceived parent-child trust and our youth mental health. Here, within this article, it explores how a parent-child trust influences youth mental health over time. It has two key psychologically factors that can help. We need to look at the social self-efficiency and then look at the self-blame. Building that trust in the parent-child relationship is linked to better mental health outcomes in youth. More positive impacts help their mental well-being. Making sure we have a listening ear can go a long way. An open door at school also will go a long way. Building a bond, building a trust bond, making sure that the child feels welcome. So over the next 3 pictures, you will see a mom and a son having a conversation over something that had happened. They're building the bond. They're talking. She's not yelling. She's not screaming. She's having a conversation with him. But then you have a mom and a son laughing and bonding. They've made it past that point. Looks like they have a great connection. But finally, the very bottom. A little girl showing fear due to her parents arguing. You can see the fear in her face. She's wondering, is it about me? What's it about? We don't know. But only that child is having anxiety, which then might revert to depression. She'll get scared. No bond being built there. So, it's okay to ask for help. So here's a little story I would love to share when it comes to asking for help. Once again, it's about my son. I noticed that he was coming home from school every day for over 2 weeks, head down, and every time we spoke about school, I would never get answers out of him. The only thing I would ever get, it was good. It was okay. 1 or 2 words. I knew something was bothering him. I would get comments like, I'm not good enough, I have no friends, I'm told I'm stupid. The list can go on and on. I finally got him to open up and express what was going on. He was afraid to speak up because he didn't want anyone to get in trouble. He said he did not like to see people get in trouble. I told him, I understand, but it is not okay to bully someone to get them in the state of depression or anxiety, to not even want to go to school. It is not okay. And I went on to tell him, he is not the only one dealing with this stuff. Which then, that is why this leads us to, it is okay to ask for help. We need to ask for help. Most importantly, we must remind young people that it is okay. No one should ever feel ashamed of their feelings or mental health struggles. Asking for help is a sign of strength, not weakness. You can see in this picture of a young boy sitting here with his hands over his eyes with a mask on. I want to now take the time for you to watch this video.
A parenting alert now. The U.S. Surgeon General has issued a new advisory on a growing youth mental health crisis, warning that depression and anxiety in young people have doubled worldwide during the pandemic. Let's talk about that with emergency physician Dr. Darian Sutton. Dr. Sutton, thanks for joining us again this morning. Break down what we see in this report.
Well, good morning, George. These are some incredibly concerning trends that we're seeing in the trends of adolescent mental health. What it seems as though is that children, adolescents, and young adults are facing considerable challenges that are augmented or exacerbated by the pandemic. In a recent report covering 80,000 youth globally, it found that symptoms of depression and anxiety doubled during the pandemic, with 25% of youth experiencing symptoms of depression and 20% experiencing symptoms of anxiety. Also, ER visits for suspected attempts of self-harm have increased by over 50% among girls. So this is an incredibly important and needed discussion to have right now.
It is, and there's a pretty wide disparity in access to help.
Absolutely, and that's one of the most striking factors that we see in this report. It identifies young groups that are more vulnerable than others, which include young people of color and young people who identify with the LGBTQIA+ community. And the access seems to be the primary issue, access to diagnostic testing, to therapy, and to pharmaceutical intervention. So hopefully this will increase funding to mental health programs, as well as access to these communities in need.
What kind of signs should parents be looking out for?
You know, I try to remind all parents that each and every person can present with mental illness in different ways, but some key symptoms that you should pay attention to, specifically regarding depression, are excessive sleeping during the day, a lack of concentration, frustration out of proportion to the cause, and a decreased desire to participate in activities they would normally enjoy. These are some of the symptoms, and I also try to remind parents to trust your gut. We often have inclinations that something is wrong before it becomes obvious, and we should use that moment to open conversations and to seek out help from a trusted provider.
Important advice. Dr. Sutton, thanks very much. If you or a loved one are struggling with thoughts of suicide, help is available. Call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at the number on the screen, or go to suicidepreventionlifeline.org for free confidential emotional support 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Well, hey there, GMA fans. Robin Roberts here. Thanks for checking.
Now that we watched the video, that was just a nice clip to be able to hear about what students go through, but even children and adolescents. So together we can make a difference. Together we can make sure that no young person feels alone in their journey. Let's support them, listen to them, and help break the stigma surrounding mental health. Together we can make a difference. We got this. We can do it. For my final article that I would love to share with everyone, it explores how mental health first aid training enhances adults' ability to identify and address the mental health needs of young people. It highlights the positive effects on recognizing early signs and providing appropriate support. When we're able to highlight and recognize the early signs, the early interventions can begin, and the appropriate support that we can give our youth, our adolescents, and even adults today can go a far way. On this slide, you will find some references. The Ohio Care Line, the Crisis Text Line, the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. Feel free. Write them down. Take a picture. Always have them, because you never know when you might need them. But it's time to make a change and stand together. Thank you. Have a wonderful evening.